Okay, so tell me the story of Grandma Gonzales.
Well, my grandma Gonzales lived in the Central Valley of California, and I lived in the suburbs outside San Francisco. So she lived about an hour away. So my whole family was, my dad's family were all migrant workers, and so grandma had 6 kids, and she would migrate from Texas to Central Valley of California picking tomatoes every year. So she lived in a very different culture than I did. She was Catholic, and I was not. She lived in a small old house. I lived in a new house in a housing tract in, the suburbs. And English was my only language, and Spanish was her only language. So I remember visiting her in her tiny house in the Central Valley of California. It's very hot, so I have memories of it just being stifling.
Absolutely.
And I remember seeing her Virgin Mary statue with rosary beads on her green dresser, and realizing this person was so mysterious to me. This was in the 1960s, and my grandma would still make her own tortillas, and she was using a molcajete, which is a stone bowl, and she was grinding all the meal with a rock. I'm not kidding, Henry, it was just a rock, and she'd grind it up. So a very mysterious person to me, kind of not really, detached. I didn't really know her that well. There was a language barrier. And so at one point, my parents brought her to our house and she stayed for a couple of days. And at that time, I was school age because I would walk up the street and go get the bus, where Juanita, my bus driver, would take us to school every day. And Grandma was staying with us, and my mom and dad headed out to work, and Grandma was with us in the morning. And of course, she's making breakfast, but there's no communication whatsoever. And it started to get really stormy, lightning and thunder. And I was always a worrywart of a kid. I was so concerned, what would happen to my grandmother, and couldn't she fend for herself? Because she wouldn't be able to talk to anybody.
This is your dad's mother?
Yeah, my father's mother, and he was bilingual, so he spoke Spanish and English, and so I was so worried, and it's kind of maternal for I think it was 1971. There was a 7-year-old boy, so I was going off to the 2nd grade, and so I just wouldn't leave the house in the morning. I was so concerned, and there was no way to express what I was going to do. I just wasn't going to leave her alone, and somehow she understood what I was saying or what I was doing. She just gleaned from my actions, and I remember being in our living room, and she walked up to me and she put both hands on my shoulders and looked me in the eye, and in perfect English said, "Patrick, go to school. I'll be fine." And I was stunned. I thought, how is that possible? And it was one of those things where you're looking around for somebody else in the room. This really happened. It really happened. And so I went off to school, and just and she had reassured me, and I was only 7, so I didn't understand like the grace of God or anything like that. I wasn't sure how she had told me this perfect English sentence. Yeah. And so of course later I learned that my grandma could speak English, and my dad finally said, "Oh yeah, my mom can speak English," and I said, well, why wouldn't she speak? And he said she was really a snob. She really believed that English was such a dirty, gutter language, and Spanish, which is a pure aristocratic language, and so she just refused to. And it was only in those dire moments of emergency that she would let it go.
English. Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously.